and welcome to setting up a portfolio in InDesign. So the first thing that we're going to need to do in setting up our portfolio is obviously set up a new document. So the document size that you choose is dependent upon the portfolio book that you have purchased or are going to be purchasing. So that's something you need to decide before you begin laying things out, is what that final document size is going to be. For our intents and purposes today, we are going to be setting ours up in a tabloid size. And I'm going to be setting mine up into, I'm going to first click on print. I can set up for that tabloid. I prefer to work in inches. If you prefer to work in picas, that's fine. I'm going to set mine up into a landscape mode. And I'm also going to ensure that I have facing pages checked, because when this works as a booklet, I want to ensure that I see what that spread view looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and create about how many pages I think I'm going to add. Remember, you can always add and delete pages as you need and move them around. So I'm going to set up for 20 pages. Because I'm going to be printing this, something I need to consider is what is my bleed area. So if you're thinking that you are going to have full bleed graphics, then you need to be setting up those bleeds at the standard 1/8 of an inch. You can also set up your margins if you would like to do that as well. I'm going to leave mine to a standard 1/2 inch margin just so I have that safe area for any text. And I'm going to go ahead and click Create. So now that I have my document set up within InDesign, the first thing I want to think about is setting up my master pages. And master pages are key and critical for any multi-page document because they help prevent you from having to copy-paste things onto multiple pages. So in your portfolio, you want to think about the things that you're going to be consistently using and having. So whether or not that's your name and contact information along the bottom of every page, whether or not you're wanting to set up an organization for how the pictures are going to be placed within your portfolio, that's something that you can easily do within your master pages. So to start working in your master pages, you can simply double click into a master here, and that will enter you into those A master pages. Another thing you can also do is right along the bottom, that will it'll show me that I'm in my A master. So if I were in page 1, I can also click that drop down and click into A master. Now I'm editing that master page. So within this master page, I'm going to go ahead and want to add some of my information along the bottom. So I'm going to grab my type tool, click and drag out a text box, and then I would want to enter in my first name, last name, so that way I have my name in there. I may also want to add in my website, mywebsite.com. I may also want to add in an email address, or even a phone number if I want people to contact me by phone. And then I've got that set up for myself. So if I just left this the way it is and I jump back into any of my pages, you'll see that, get back into my pages palette here, that's going to be on every single left page that I've done. So because I have facing pages, I want to ensure that if I want something to continue left and right, that I set that up in my left and right spreads as I go through. But you can see that that A master applies to anything with the letter A on it. So that looks pretty good. But let's go ahead and style that up a little bit more as I figure this out. Let's zoom in here so you can see a little better. There we go. So here's that, my little styling information that I would like to have in there. That looks good. I want to change the font. It's a default font, and you know, hopefully, to never stick with just that default font. So I'm going to highlight that, and when you're building your portfolio, you should hopefully already have set up a little bit of your branding. Your portfolio is no different than the rest of your brand, so you'll want to set your fonts up to match your personal brand. So I'm just going to set mine to Avenir. I'll set it to Avenir Light. That looks good. 12 is going to be pretty big, even though this is 11 by 17 portfolio and it's a bigger page size. 12 is still a fairly large typeface, so I'm going to knock this down to about an 8. I'll kick it up to a 9. There we go. That's still going to be readable when it prints, although it's going to look very small on this page as I'm working. I'm working on a laptop currently, so these pages look pretty small to my field of vision, but realize when you print this out, this is still going to be a readable size. However, it's not going to distract from the rest of the work that's in your portfolio. It's just a nice consistent that's going to be on every single page, is to have your sign off somewhere along the bottom. So that looks pretty good. Now we got to think of what else I'm going to be putting on this spread. What else do I want to put on here? Well, I know that my portfolio pieces need to go on here somewhere. So working with my master page is a good place for me to start to decide how those pages are going to fit together. And you want to take a look at your body of work and take a nice survey of it before you begin working in this and say, how many multi-piece projects do I have? How many single piece projects do I have? How many projects have a lot of vertical space? How many have a lot of horizontal space? And then you can set up for those in your master. So if you answered none to one of those, you don't need to set up a master page for those items. If you said, oh, I have multiple things that require, I have a poster series, so they're all very vertical, and I'm going to lay it out on a horizontal page. I want to ensure that I have some consistency when I lay those out. So if I said, all right, I know that I have a vertical thing, let me go ahead and grab my frame and say, all right, any vertical item that's going to sit, I'm going to go ahead and put this on the right page. Move this over here. There we go. So if I know I have vertical items, say like a poster or a poster series, all right, so a single poster is going to fit into this frame. So if I only have one, maybe I want to center it. Maybe I want to right align it to the page. Maybe I want to left align it to the page. This is where that master page item comes in so handy, because you can set these up, and then as you populate with your work, you simply are clicking and placing, and then they're all going to be in the same page. Nothing's going to be bouncing around. So I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, let's go ahead and center that to the spread. So I'm going to open up my Align palette. I'm going to say align to page. Make sure that's checked if you want something to align to the spread or align to margins. And I can say vertically align. I could say align to the top, center, center if you want it perfectly centered in there, or if you want to align it to the top of that margin. That's up to you. Make sure you're using your Align palette, because that will help you figure this out. Great, so that looks pretty good so far. I've got one single vertical image. Now let me add a couple more things into this master page, and then I'm going to be ready to make a duplicate of it. So the next thing I want to add into it would be where I'm going to put my text. You're going to have a written design statement for every single project that you are putting in here. Now you can place that right into as you're working. However, you may want to consider just putting that into your master page and getting that set up. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to figure out, where do I want to put it? Do I want to put it more to the right? Do I want to put it to the left? Where is going to be that nice place that I can put this design statement as I'm working so that it will not interfere with my project? So I'm going to place this, I'm going to just left align all of mine. You can, your design is your prerogative. That's a big part of laying this out, is figuring out your design. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to just say, all right, then project name goes here. That looks good. Now I want to do some of my paragraph styles to set up some hierarchy for this. I'm going to create another text box real quick before I get too far, and then I'm going to put project description goes here. And I'm going to leave a larger text box so I can fill up that whole text box when I get there. All right, project name goes here. So let's open up our paragraph styles and set these up there. Paragraph styles. All right, let's create a new paragraph style. I'm going to double click to open that up, and I'm going to call this project title. Whenever you name your paragraph style, you want to give it a name that makes sense to you, particularly if you get quite a few of these, that way you know exactly what to click and to apply. So I'm going to give it some basic character formats. I know already that I'm going to use Avenir for this. That will fit with my branding. You're going to pick out what fits with your branding. I'm going to probably make mine a little heavier because this is going to be a title. I want to establish a nice clean hierarchy of my type to go along with all of my write-ups. So I'm going to say Avenir Black. That looks good. I'm going to knock it up maybe to 14 points. I don't want to make it too huge, so that way it's getting kind of obtrusive or really hokey or, you know, clunky and horsey. I can set up my leading here if I need to, kerning, any of. So I'm going to click through all of these options to ensure that I'm setting all the things that I would like to set for this paragraph style option. Remember that you can always click back in here and make edits as necessary as you're working. It's important to set these up early as you work to ensure that all of your rules get applied evenly, and if you change your mind, you're making one simple change and it's globally applying, as opposed to going back and trying to change every single page and remember what you changed. That can get very, very tedious very quickly. I'm going to set mine to an 85% gray. That looks really nice. And I'm going to click OK. So my project title, and you see that that will apply. That looks really nice. Cool. So now I'm going to click on project description, and I want to give it its own rule so that way it will fit in here. I'm going to create new style. And I can say, I'm going to call this one write-up, project write-up. Again, it doesn't matter what you call them as long as it makes sense to you. And I can base this on my title. So then it will fill in automatically some of those things I've selected. So Avenir is already picked. Maybe I don't want it to be black. Remembering that this write-up is going to be a little bit smaller hierarchically. So I'm going to set it to, let's say, a bookcase. I'm going to drop that down to maybe an 11 points. That looks pretty good. It's going to remember that gray color, and I'm going to click OK. And that automatically changed that for me. So those look a little bit nicer. They're going to match what I've already set. I can also set this up as well, since I haven't set up my running footer. So I'm going to click New Style again. I'm going to call this running footer, and I can base that off of my write-up, except that I want it a little smaller. There, light, 9 points. I'm going to set that color to 85. Actually, I might make that a little bit smaller. Let's try 8 point. There we go. That looks nice. So now I've got all these applied. That way, if I need to add anything else, I can keep building off of these paragraph styles that I have started, and I can make changes if I'd like to. I'm going to go ahead and pop these into the corner. That looks pretty good. So let's kind of recap what I've done here. I've set up my paragraph styles for both the project name and the project description. Put that down just a little bit. I've set up a running footer that will go on the left page only, and I may decide later that I want to have it go elsewhere. And I've set up one single image filler or image frame here, so that way I can pop an single image in here. So that's the master page setup that I've come up with right now. That's a good base to start from. And so if I click back out into any of my pages, I can see that that is applied to everything with that A applied to it, which will by default in InDesign will be every single page in your document. And you can see that those have popped in here. So that's a good jumping off point. Now we'll continue to build with that. So now that I have one master page created, I'm going to go ahead and create an additional master page based on my first master page that I created. So if we double click to enter into our A master, let's just review what we've got here. We've got that single image, and then I have my project name, my write-up, and then my little running footer, which is great. So what happens if I want to do multiple projects and show multiple images per spread? Well, I can use what I've already created and just create another master page based upon that first one. So within my Pages panel, I'm simply going to click the hamburger menu, and I'm going to say New Master. By default, InDesign starts number or lettering A, B, C for your masters, so we're going to keep the prefix B, and then I'm going to go ahead and rename this. While it's called master, I'm going to rename this to be to image. And then under based on master, right now if I have none, no styles will be applied to it, but if I say base it on a master, then it will bring in all of that stuff from that A master spreads. I'm going to keep everything else consistent, and I'm going to click OK. So now that I have my B master to images, it's going to have that A master applied to it. That's showing me that the A master style has been applied to this, which is great. But now I want to kind of override that and adjust some of those settings. So there's a couple different ways that I can do this. Once I'm in my B master, you'll notice everything is locked, just like on a master page. So I can click, I can individually unlock these, or I can override all of the master page items. To override those master items, I can simply hold down Shift, Command or Control, Command if you're on a Mac, Control if you're on a PC, and then click on any one of those individual items, and that will unlock that specific item. So I can unlock any of those things as I need. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock that image frame, and maybe I'll have 2 images for this. So I'm just going to slide this one over, holding down Shift. I'm going to hold down my Option key, the Alt Option key, which will clone out my second image frame. And now I have 2 images that will go onto that page, reminding you that you can set up the image sizes any way you decide, as is appropriate for your portfolio. So in that way, I can continue on and keep continuing to make master pages depending on the layout that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and make one more just for additional practice. I've got this 2 image one, so I'm going to say New Master, Master C. I'm going to call this one 3 image, and I'm going to base it on my B master. Great. Now you can see that that B master has been applied to that. I'm going to go ahead and Shift and click, unlock that, and I'll drag over, cloning another image. So now I've got 3 image frames that I can go ahead and fill when I get out of working in my master page item. So now that I have all my master pages set up, I'm ready to start bringing in some of my images into my portfolio book. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of these master pages and back into my spreads. That's important to remember to do before you start designing, because again, if you start placing images into your master pages, they're going to be applied across all of your pages. So I'm going to close this just for space. So I can see that I have that A master applied to this first spread. Let's go ahead and work with that one. So I can see that I have my project name, my project description, my little running footer, and then my single image. So now that I'm out of here, I want to again unlock that master page item, just that single image. So I'm going to do Shift, Command, and click to unlock that. Now I want to go ahead and bring in an image. Now there's multiple ways you can bring in images to InDesign. The most common one is File, Place. You always want to place a file as opposed to copying and pasting it in, which doesn't embed. So a file placed to a link, that's the most common one. Another way to get your images in, especially if you have a lot of images that you're bringing in, is to browse in Bridge. And if you don't use Bridge, I recommend using Bridge for batching files, as well as for some of your file management, because it's very helpful when you're working with large documents with lots of images in looking at those. So I'm going to go to File, Browse in Bridge, which will open up Bridge, and that's going to send me to basically the last folder that I have worked in. So I'm going to navigate to a different file here. I'm going to go to a stock photos. So here I have a whole folder of stock photos. Will show me all of the images that I've set up in a folder. Ideally, if you started your portfolio, you have a separate folder on your computer, on your hard drive, in your cloud that has all your images that you're wanting to put into your portfolio. So I can go ahead and grab one of these images. So I'm just going to say, let's grab this nice image of the chair. So if I'm looking at my library within Bridge and I can see all my photos, it's very easy for me to drag and drop right out of Bridge and into my InDesign file. So I've selected my image of the chair. I'm just going to drag and drop that right into my image frame. And you can go through your document and simply drag and drop all of your portfolio images into the places that you would like them. So let's look at this image very quickly. So by default, because we've set up this size frame for that image, it's going to automatically crop to that frame. If you click in the center, you can see there is the remainder of that image. So there's different ways that you can get this image to fit. And it's important to remember your fitting. So the options you have up here is fill frame proportionally or fit content proportionally. Let's look at what those do. So fill frame proportionally. This is going to fill that full frame. So it's going to take basically scaling from the least amount. If I see that I had a little bit extra top and bottom, that when I click that, it's only going to scale to where the whole frame is filled. So now if I say fit content proportionally, that's going to fit the entire photo within that frame proportionally. So then I'll have extra frame that is not filled as opposed to image being cut off. So those are two different ways that you can fill that. Other options are fit content to frame, which will skew your picture. You don't want to do that. You have your fit frame to content, which will adjust your frame to the size of the image at 100% its size. You may want to do that. Or center content, which by default, since we drag and drop this in here, it is already centered. So those are different ways you can adjust that frame to fit your content. Additionally, if you want to keep that frame that exact size and you just want to move the image around, you can simply click in the center in that little double circle, and then you can slide your image around within that frame to adjust the crop of that image within InDesign. If you would like to scale this, there's this lovely little button that says auto fit that you can check on, and now you can, holding down Shift, get a proportional scale of that image. If you do not have auto fit checked on, this will adjust the size of the frame, which adjusts the size of the crop. Or if you click on that picture, you get the orange frame, I can adjust the size of the image within the frame itself. It doesn't change the size of the frame. So that's a way that you can use Bridge within InDesign to place your images. As you're building your portfolio, it's important to think about how you're going to organize your projects within your portfolio. Projects don't just go in a haphazard random order. They need to go in a logical sequence of projects and within logical groupings. So look at your projects as a whole and decide what are logical ways that I can group these projects together. Now that may be things like branding and identity systems, packaging, web design, application design, mobile application design, any of those different types of design nuances that things can get grouped to like items to like items. So if you have multiple identity systems, you can put all of those together. If you have illustration, you can put those together. Or if you have digital illustration, photo editing, any of those things, they should go with that kind of in a like sequence. So that's how you want to think about grouping things together. And another way to kind of reinforce how your portfolio is organized is to add visual wayfinding, so that as somebody is flipping through your portfolio, they can find where or understand what categories they are in. There's a lot of different ways to do visual wayfinding within your portfolio, but typically when you're working on this, it's going to want to be a master page item. So I'm going to open back up my master pages, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust this to image 1 really quickly. So I want to add in that little visual wayfinding blurb. So it depends, and this is something you may need to figure out before you start designing this, is am I printing with a full bleed, or am I not going to have the bleeds? So then I need to adjust for that within my design. I'm going to create a little flag here that may go along the top. It's simply going to say what type of image that I have. I'm going to give it a lovely standard color. Obviously your colors you would want to pull from your branding. Pick this nice dark blue here. Maybe we'll tint it back to be kind of this really light aqua color. I'm going to go ahead and add a little point to it and make it a cute little flag right in the center. And there we go. And then I'm just going to add my text box that says what type of a thing that this is. So I'm going to say brand identity. And I can apply any of my paragraph styles to it. Let's say I want to do a project title. Rotate and place. I'm going to adjust my type just a little bit so it fills this space a little bit better, looks a little nicer. And that looks nice. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the other side as well. It depends on your design, but for what I'm working with, I'm going to put it on both sides. And that looks good for my brand identity. All right, I'm going to exit back into my pages. Let's go to page 2. And I'm going to apply that master page item to here. So now I can see that. So let's go ahead and fill in an image. This time I'm going to do a file place. And I brought in this image. Let's say I want to make a nice full bleed image out of this. I'm actually going to take this frame and fill it that whole way. So you can kind of see where I'm going to create a problem for myself. Just align that in that frame a little bit better. Glorious. Okay. So the problem is with most master page items is that if I'm only working in one layer, once I place this image, I've completely obliterated that wayfinding. So I want to fix this without having to manually unlock and move things around. So I'm going to go jump back into that master page, and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it wayfinding labels. Now if I place these little labels, zoom in so I can actually grab them. Grab both these things. I'm just going to click on this blue dot, move it up to the red dot. Now you see that that's on that layer above layer 1. Let me just pan over here real quick and grab the other one. And now both of those labels are on their own layer above layer 1 where I'm going to be working. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer so I don't accidentally place images back into layer 1. Now if I jump back into my page 2 design, you'll see that that has brought that label over top of my image. So I can still see that little wayfinding icon over top of my portfolio image. So this is a way you can keep add those layers wherever you need them in your portfolio book. You may or may not find that helpful for your wayfinding identity within there, that maybe you don't want those things to actually touch. It's just another way that if you for some reason have full bleed graphics or background graphics or anything like that that you want images to go over top, you can work with your layers panel, and that way your master page items can override the graphics that you are placing on individual pages. So finally, let's talk about those written design statements that you're going to need to have for every single project. What are the types of things that you're going to need? Well, first you're going to need a project name. What is your project called? Who is it for? So that's some of the secondary things that you may want to think about is, who is my client or the class that I designed this in? When did I design it? And then what, if it was a printed piece or something that went into production, what was the final size and scope of that project? So if you did a large-scale poster series, how big were those posters? What's that final print size? When they're looking at this in your portfolio book, they can't see what size that was meant to be, even if it was a billboard or something that way. Small printed pieces. What was the final size of your brochure? How many pages? If you did package design, are you only showing me a small number of the pieces that went with this project? So let's say you did the 50-some piece project. You're not going to show me all 50 pieces, but you may want to tell me this was part of a larger project. This was a part of 50 pieces. Was this project designed with anyone else? It's good to give credit where credit is due, so go ahead and give credit to other designers who helped you work on this. So those are some of the specifics that you want to maybe have with your project name. For your project description, you want to give a brief, 3 to 5 sentences about your project. If it needs to compound and be longer than that, that's okay, but you don't want to write a novel. Hit it with the punchy things. Tell me, what were the ramifications of this project? What were the specifications of this project? So if you did a class project, you were assigned certain rules that you had to follow within the class project. What was it? What were the learning objectives of this project? If it was a client project, what did the client come to you with? If you designed a website for them, but they already had the logo, it's okay to say they came with existing branding and a logo. That lets people know that while you didn't design that, you worked within an existing brand. If you said, I developed the logo, the branding, and the website, then that's okay. You say all those things. Or you said, I did the logo and the branding, and some of the web design. Okay, you're being very specific about what you did. If they asked you to solve specific issues, or they had specific things you had to keep in mind while working as far as client expectations, target consumer, any of those things, you want to talk about that. Any of the challenges that you faced during this project, is okay to talk about those challenges. You don't want to say here was all the problems that I've suffered through. What was a challenging thing for you? How did you overcome those challenges? What was your thought process behind doing the decisions, doing the things that you did and deciding on those decisions that you made? If you were advised by an art director or client, or they gave you talk about those as well. A lot of designers, when they write these project descriptions, think about a problem and a solution statement. I like to think of it as a challenge and solution statement. What was the challenges you were presented with, and how did you solve those challenges? So that's a basic way you can think about writing those descriptions. Again, professional language always. You always want to sound professional as you're talking about your projects. You never want to say, I had to do this, I was forced to do this, I had to work with this logo even though I thought it was ugly. That's fine if you think, but that was what they came to you with, and you want to sound professional. You can say all the good things you worked with and the challenges you overcame, as opposed to things you had to do or problems you were stuck with. So again, and then once you've written your project descriptions, have someone review them. Have a second set of eyes take a look at them, review for spelling and grammar, as well as how does this sound? Does this make sense to you? Don't assume that your project is self-explanatory. For somebody who's never seen this before, have them read it and say, does this make sense to you? Does this fully explain what this project is, or are you really unclear as to what I have done? That follow through and having an outside person look at it and maybe ask you questions about the project is going to go a long way to helping you write these descriptions. So don't feel that you just sit down, bash them out, and you're done. Definitely always have that second set of eyes. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this has been very helpful for you, and good luck building your portfolio.